Welcome to Overtime on Inferno, your weekly roundup of all of the big stories in Counter-Strike in less time than a Super Bowl ad break. I'm Logan, this is Aizyesque, let's get into it. So this week, North actually disbanded, and that's not a clickbait thing.
Yeah, they're done. Like it was seemingly out of nowhere as well. Just like woke up in the morning, it's like, oh yeah, no, your favorite team, yeah, they don't exist anymore. Cool, wicked.
So us here at Overtime on Inferno think that in solidarity with North, that Astralis should also disband.
Yeah,
It's only right.
I mean, if you lose to NIP or Chaos 2.0 in a 2-0, maybe it's time that you just maybe they were in solidarity already. Like they're like, North disbanded, we need to show how much they meant to us by also going out 7th to 9th in an event.
Maybe if they had legendary Danish Opper MSL, they might have done better against NIP.
Yeah, I think maybe if they put out a team of MSL, AZ, Valdi, Kiebi, and Gade, maybe they could maybe throw in a Nico as well. Time to time, maybe they could win some big tournaments, I reckon.
Have a coach like a Rugga, Jumpy.
Yeah, maybe an Ave.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah.
I reckon that'd be a good team.
Yeah. In addition, North America is disbanding again. It's like the 7th time. This time Automatic has left for Valorant, and Liquid has started appealing to Naruto fans with their Liquid Naruto collaboration that came out 3 hours ago.
As far as I'm concerned, that is also grounds for disbandment.
We're just going to disband the entire Counter-Strike scene this week.
I feel weird enough. I would feel weird enough wearing like an esports shirt in public anyway. But if it was like an esports shirt and it was Weeby, I'd just be like, this is not sustainable. I can't do this.
I actually just bought an HLTV shirt the other day, and it looks like a college shirt, and I'm sure I'm going to get asked on it about 7 times. I'm just not going to say anything about it.
Yeah, you got to come up with something else that HLTV could stand for. I've got nothing off the top of my head, but you're gonna have to come up with something.
Tweet us with the ideas that we should use for when I wear that shirt. All right, let's get into the execute. So let's actually talk about North for like 30 seconds. So a lot of players and coaches went through North, so let's give a quick rundown of the players and coaches that went through. So Rubino, Aizyesque, and that was when he was actually Aizyesque Boy, Rugga, Cajun B, Config, Nico, Mertz, MSL, Abe, Mither, Cadian, Valde, Yugi, Christau, Kierby, Kreese, Jumpy, Grux, Lekro, Gade, and some overrated entry fragger.
As far as I'm concerned, those are 21 of the best players and coaches ever to play the game.
As a team, they definitely accomplished something. Our resident North expert here can fill us in on that a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the big one is DreamHack Master Stockholm. There's that's like the sort of defining the defining tournament of the whole North project was that tournament where everything did seem to come together. MSL was like Pete Guardian with an AWP and Pete Glaive with the brain. And then, AZ was in the best one of his life. Valde, Kiebi. Wait. Valde, Nico. Was it Valde, Nico, Kiebi, I think?
That sounds right.
Yeah.
That sounds right.
And everyone was just playing at their peak level to beat Astralis twice in 2 best-of-3s in the same tournament. But it never seemed to come together like that at any other period. It never quite came off. And people always point to the Rubino, like Rubino leaving as the catalyst for things going wrong. But if you actually look at the results with Rubino after E-League, they weren't good. Like North were not doing well before Rubino left. Rubino left. They had a very slight upturn when AZ joined. But realistically, I don't think Rubino staying would have been the difference. I think the only thing I can think is that there's some like curse on their Teleparken, and North just never got rid of it because their team just seemed cursed no matter what. Obviously, there were some decisions you could point to as being poor. Maybe letting Magist go has not really shown them in a great light. I think the config one made sense at the time. Like everyone knows his sort of behind the scenes issues. I mean, he admitted to them himself. And I don't know MSL or config personally, but I can only imagine those two would clash. You know what I mean? Like,
I think the second the config knife happened, I think config was done for that team, even if he was on for another year or two.
even though that was, and part of my French here, fucking hilarious.
It was fantastic.
It was. I've never seen somebody have a strong, like, hold their nerve better than that. Like, can you imagine? Like, you could just shoot him and just win the round. It's overtime in a big event, and Config's going for a knife that is entirely inconsequential just for style points. I mean, I can only respect that.
The worst part is that we have like actual data on what would have happened if he missed the knife because Simple did it against Liquid like 2 years later,
Yeah, I remember that.
where he misses the knife on Nitro. Nitro gets the clutch, and they Liquid comes back and wins the entire game just off the fact that Simple couldn't knife Nitro.
Yeah. And if it can happen to Simple, it can sure as hell happen to anyone else.
Yeah. So, what does North shutting down actually mean for the scene? Because there's a lot of things that happen here. We've had teams be dropped, specifically in North America, right? We've had 100T dropping their roster. We've had Gen G dropping their roster. Chaos dropped their roster. New England Whalers dropped their roster. Cloud9 dropped their roster, but got another roster. Right? We've had a lot of movement recently, specifically in North America, but also elsewhere of just teams dropping. But we've never had an entire org shut down.
Yeah, it's quite a harrowing tale for esports, because if an organization backed by a big football club, if they can't find funding for esports, then we do have to wonder how sustainable this really is. And I know a lot of teams are pumping money in, know it or believing that esports will be massive in 10 years, and we will be the NBA of the future. But for now, it is something of a money sink. Um,
Yeah. So I think this year is actually the first year that League of Legends, I think specifically LCS, has become a profitable entity on its own, and it's been going on for like 10 years on its own. So I guess it's a good foreshadowing thing of if this franchise thing has been going on for this long, that you definitely can make money out of it.
you can, but
It's taken Riot 10 years to do it.
and that is with one of the biggest, probably the biggest esport in terms of fan base and revenue. And what you are seeing in the LCS that is completely the opposite to this situation is see teams like TSM, Cloud9 spending 6, 7, all the way up to 11 million reportedly for perks on one player, which is just insane when you think that there is an organization that can't find funding for a team that is reportedly much cheaper. But
Yeah.
we'll see.
And from everything we've heard, their buyouts are very small. Last thing on LCS is that LCS is actually the third biggest sport in America behind the NFL and the NBA. So there's definitely room that this can go.
I think that just points to how shit ice hockey is.
I mean, yeah, that's true. I mean, it's behind. It's in front of baseball.
Yeah, I mean, baseball isn't a particularly great spectator sport.
No,
Outside of the film Moneyball,
great movie.
it is.
Um, so do you have any thoughts on where the team that North just dropped is gonna go? Like the big names on it, I guess, are like Lekro and Gade and AZ, right? All
Yeah.
big all big names, right? So is there some place that you could see any of them having an instant impact or an instant upgrade over somebody else?
So I think the obvious player who probably has value outside of North, to me, in my opinion at least, is MSL. This is somebody who, like him or love him or hate him, I should say. I mean, for me, it's like him or love him or hate him. Um, he is a guy who has built teams before that have done well, and he is somebody who's quite versatile. He can entry frag, he can orb. You can argue about how good he is at those things, but I think he's not terrible at either of them. And there are teams that there will always be a demand for an in-game leader. I mean, unless you're Nico. Um, I think I do think the players will split up. I think Grux is very talented, but we haven't seen much of him on North. I think Christu is talented as well, but I'm not sure how highly he'll be rated in Denmark, like outside of North. I know they were very, very keen on him, but I don't know about how highly rated he is elsewhere. I mean, obviously, I'd like to see AZ back on a tier 1, tier 2 team. I mean, I still think he has plenty to offer. He's incredibly talented, albeit, sometimes he has trouble applying that consistently.
Mhm.
But it's hard to say because North have been stuck in this sort of malaise for so long. It's hard to say how good those players will be outside of that, especially as we've seen how much Kiebi has struggled on phase. So I don't know for sure.
Yeah, I think the most recent player that's not Kirby that we've seen outside the North system was Lekro before he moved into North on
Yeah,
NIP. And I think Lekro is going to actually be a good pickup for a tier 2 team just because of everybody's looking for an IGL always. And while Lekro is not the greatest IGL you could ever say, like I wouldn't say he's in like the conversation for the best one. He's definitely a serviceable IGL, and there's just enough teams that need IGLs right now that he'll be picked up by somebody.
I think so. And I
We
think
hope so.
I think his stock is still pretty high outside of North as well. NIP players and management speak very highly of him. The only thing with Lekro is that he's actually the wrong side of 25, which may put some people off, even though it doesn't really matter in terms of performance, but it does in terms of like long term building a team. That's the only thing I can think of that would maybe put somebody off Lekro is can you
I'm,
find a younger version?
I mean, there's a solution for that, which is he can go to the Scandinavian retirement team of Dignitas.
I mean, that's not actually, yeah, that might be a nice move for him, but I I think he can do better than that, but it'd be quite interesting at least.
Yep. All right. So, our new segment, let's go and stand in a Molotov.
My favorite thing to do.
We're going to give our hottest takes on stuff. Then we've got some lukewarm takes and some really cold takes to end it off. So, my hot take, Nifty is a good opper
Completely
and a
disagree.
terrible personality.
I
I
mean, I
think
don't know him as a person, but I think he's. I don't think he's
well,
very good.
not a person, but from everything we've heard about the NV camp, right, is that his personality just clashed with everyone. They continuously replace players to get him personalities that went with him.
Yeah,
But I think that deep down, Nifty is still a good opper.
I don't think there's a still about it. I never thought he was particularly good anyway. I've always thought Nifty was really overrated because he had like the odd pop off game, and then most games he would just not have much impact on the game, even though he had the most expensive weapon.
So here's my thinking behind he's a good opper. I think if you take away the IGL role from him, right, he'd be considerably more consistent. And we've seen him at his highs. We've seen like the Nifty 50 bomb, right? We've seen the 4K all through walls kind of thing. Um, we've seen very good play from him when he was doing well. And I think if you take an IGL role away from him, he'll become more consistent with the op and he'll be able to be a good opper. I think he's like naturally good opper that just he's taken on so many roles that he himself has become like spread a mile wide, inch deep kind of vibes.
Yeah, and he's clearly a not a great in-game leader. I mean, the fact that he keeps clashing with people should be like that. You can't do that as an in-game leader unless you're really, really good. But I also just don't think he was that good at AWPing before he was in-game leading anyway. So I just don't. I don't see it with Nifty. I'll be honest, but we'll just have to agree to disagree on that because you'll never convince me. My hot take is that the only player on Astralis who can potentially be considered the GOAT of CSGO is Glaive. It's not Device. Um, because Device before Glaive, Dupree before Glaive, serial chokers, Astralis before Glaive. They were memed for always finishing fourth place. With Glaive, potentially the greatest team of all time. Glaive drops out for a bit, potentially the fourth best team of all time. you can't like that to me that is GOAT status. There's no greater metric than winning, I suppose, when it comes to that. And Glaive is the reason Astralis are winning.
I agree with that 100%.
Yep. I
I
think
think
it's very
the
difficult to argue against.
yeah. I think the only other goat conversation you can have in that team is that Bubsky is the goat of the bench. Um,
Um, I feel like there's probably maybe shit. No, I've got nothing. Got that bit.
you could say like goat 6-man or whatever, but like Bubsky's a better player than Navarra. He's just sitting on the Astralis bench though.
Yeah, I mean Nivera is absolutely goated as a sixth man. But yeah, I mean the fact they just refuse to use Bubsky, maybe that's like Glaive's biggest downfall is that he just refuses to play Bubsky. Free my mans.
All right, so lukewarm take. That's not a very hot take. I've seen it before. I still think it should be done. Counter Strike should put the art revolver in the 6th pistol slot, so that
Um,
way other people use it.
I don't think anyone's going to use it until they nerf the Deagle though, because the Deagle's just so overbearing. There's just no reason to use a revolver. The revolver's actually not bad. It's
No, it's
basically a
not bad.
pocket scout, but why would you ever use it when the Deagle is basically, you know, it's like the revolver except you can spam it and two hit people at close range.
I mean, you can spam the revolver too. That's the whole point of the right click.
Not accurately. You
Yeah,
can accurately spam the Deagle. Well, I can't, but some people can.
there's times in games always that I just decide I want to go high noon and I have the deagle equipped and I can't pull out the revolver. So
Yeah, you know what? You've convinced me with that.
that's
Sometimes
that's
you just
really
gotta
the
go
only
high
reason why
noon.
I want it. I just want to go high noon sometimes. You're winning 15-2 and you're like, you know what? I want a meme on the other team. I want the revolver.
Yeah, ever since they changed the Negev, there's no great BM gun. I feel.
Yeah, because the negative just it has legitimate use cases.
Yeah, exactly. Which is just, I don't want that shit. My lukewarm take is the Galil's overpowered and the Farmass needs a buff. The Galil is just too cheap for how good it is. It's like 1800. You can buy it second round most of the time. You basically never have to eco, and the Galil, I think damage wise, is almost identical to the M4.
It's an M4 with
35
more
bullets.
bullets.
Yeah, I mean obviously it's harder to spray, but for 1800, I don't give a shit. I'm buying that all the time.
Yeah. The thing I see that the FAMAS has going for it is the recoil pattern is just a straight line.
Yeah, yeah, that is true.
You need zero skill. You just pull down with your mouse and you'll be fine.
Yeah, I mean that is true. I think the price levels are completely out of line. I know obviously the T side has to be slightly cheaper, but the Galil is 700 cheaper than the FAMAS, or is it 450 cheaper? Either way, it's it's just nowhere near. It's nowhere near that. Like it's so much better than the FAMAS. Like in a straight duel, it beats it. It's more versatile. It's just more useful. The FAMAS has no real. There's no real situation where the FAMAS is a gun I think you should ever be buying. I would say buff the burst fire because that's its only niche. So make the burst fire actually useful and make it skillful. And then, maybe people will buy the FAMAS to be bursting heads off, and that'd be cool.
I'm just trying to imagine having an actual burst fire weapon in Counter Strike. That would completely change everything.
It was like that on 1.6, I think.
Yeah. Um, and our extremely cold takes are Smoke has put out the Molotov that we've decided to stand in takes. Nato Safex should be on a good team. He shouldn't have to carry the Lyngby Vikings to
How
top
good
30.
are we talking, though?
At least top 30 already.
All right,
Like
fine.
he
I
shouldn't have to
think,
carry a team to the top 30. He should be in a team that is already top 30. He can carry them to the top 10 or the top 20.
maybe I'm not convinced by NATO. He seems pretty decent, but I'm not sure he's like amazing. I don't know, man. My cold take is that Godsent will be better than MIBR because I just think Dumao and Barton are really, really good. And I think, as much as I love Bolts, I just don't think this new MIBR team will be able to be better than Godsent.
Yeah, I mean Bolts is from one of my favorite weird rosters
Yeah,
of that Immortals roster that came second place in the major.
yeah.
So I always have a soft spot for Bolts, but I agree with you on that one. Godson's definitely going to end up being better.
Yeah, I
All
think.
right, let's get into the post plant. So, Blast Premier Group A happens this past week ish. We have to talk about NIP. So, we said we weren't going to be excited about them, but we also said last week that when we were the most excited about them is when we weren't excited about them at all.
Yeah.
And then they 2-0'd Astralis. And then they 2-0'd Big and got to the finals without losing a map.
Yeah, if you just listen carefully, there you can just hear the sound of me smugly smiling because I said NIP, when you're not excited about them, that's when they do well. They 2-0 Astralis, the new kid that nobody rated, or at least Maui Snake didn't, goes and like pops off. They like finish above Astralis and OG, who are just a consistent disappointment. I don't know how they manage it. NIP are like they're flying. Okay, they lost a big, but I mean it's one of those games where Searson just orbs everyone that he just does sometimes. Um, yeah, I don't know. You just can't. The only way to predict NIP is to predict the opposite of what you think's going to happen. And when you do, you're generally right. And say Maui Snake was saying how he didn't think ZTR was a particularly good pickup. He popped off in his first game, and Maui Snake got a load of abuse, and then he was like dead silent for the rest of the tournament. And Maui Snake was like, "Yeah, I told you." So yeah, fair enough, you were right. But
Yeah. I
I,
mean, it's an obvious upgrade over Twist as far as we've seen. Like, regardless of if he was dead silent or not. Like,
it's an upgrade in terms of you no longer have two primary AWPers, which is just never a good idea. I don't know how good he actually is, but pretty nice to pop off in your first game.
especially when it's against, as you said, the one of the greatest teams of all time, if not the greatest, who's in great form right now.
Never
Well,
would have happened if Bobski was playing.
no, never. So rest of that group. So let's go through it. Astralis played NIP, lost 0-2, won 2-0 against OG, no surprise there. Then lost 2-0-2 against Big in the consolation final. Big won 2-0 against OG, 0-2 against NIP, 2-0 against Astralis in the consolation final, and then 2-0 NIP in the actual finals itself. OG lost 0-2 to Big, and then 0-2 to Astralis.
So
So rough tournament for OG.
every game in this group was a 2-0.
Yeah,
I
there
kind
was
of didn't
no.
realize that at first.
Yeah, there was
Um,
no three maps.
yeah, no three mappers. OG didn't win a single map, which I think is surprising given their group. I mean, it's quite a tough group, but you would expect them to at least get a map here and there. Um, I don't have any faith whatsoever in OG. I liked the team when it was started, but I just don't. I don't know, man. I don't know if it's just a lack of firepower because Issa hasn't really been the player I thought he was. I don't know if it's just that or if there's bigger problems, but either way, there's something wrong with OG, and it's something we need to keep an eye on at the start of this year because there's so many players available now, plenty of Danish players. Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. That you could potentially pick up. Maybe the odd Swede as well. So it might be worth them looking into that.
Yeah. And if you and I were to look at this group ahead of time, right? In every single group, there's always like the one team that you're like, yeah, everyone else is going to beat up on this team. We would have said it was NIP. I don't think either of us would have said it would be OG. We would have said that, maybe OG gets one or two maps off NIP or something like that. Somewhere
Yeah,
in
I
it.
think I'd have expected OG third, NIP fourth, and then
Yeah.
Astralis and Big as a coin flip online.
Yeah, but
Um,
no one expects a NIP second place.
and as we're recording this, it looks like Vitality is going to be the Whiffing Boys of Group B because they just got 2-0'd by Complexity, got absolutely stomped. So that's pretty big. But I think EG might be the Whiffing Boys in that group. I think EG
EG's
have not
probably going
been
to be the
good at the
whipping boys
moment.
in that group.
Yeah, I mean these are some stacked groups there. Like EG's group is G2, Vitality, and Complexity. Like when
Yeah.
EG are the Whipping Boys, it's a strong group.
Yeah.
Obviously, Group C is Navi, MIBR, FaZe, and Liquid. That one's like a toss up between MIBR and FaZe as to who's going to be the Whiffing Boys.
It's probably going to be FaZe for right now.
You know what? It's going to be Navi, isn't it? They've just won a tournament. They're going to go out in the groups. It's
Yep.
guaranteed.
Boomich is just going to be resting on his laurels and just call Rush B every round.
Yeah. Simple's going to get angry. He's going to punch a table and going to lose every game somehow.
He's
I
gonna
don't know
kick
how.
Boomich off the team.
He's gonna
He's gonna
actually
get
kick
angry
him.
enough. He's gonna get angry enough that he's just like, "Yo, Bit, you're coming in instead of Boomich. I'm calling the strats now."
Yeah, I'd love to see Simple go full like tyranny mode.
All right, let's go into overtime. The most important stuff of the week that happened. Mad Lions has released Peacemaker, their coach for a year and a half now.
I'm sure he'll find another job. He always does.
He always finds another job. Every time. Automatic left Counter Strike. We mentioned it at the top of the pod, but Automatic leaving Counter Strike's a big deal. That's another major winner from that Cloud9 team that has left Counter Strike for Valorant. Like there's the North American scene is losing people quickly. It's siphoning water out of the boat right now.
Yeah, Automatic's a really big one to lose as well. As you say, he's a major
Yeah,
winner, and a lot of people really looked up to Automatic. I think sneakily, the other one that's really big for NA to lose is Katie. She's
yeah,
super good, and she moved to
yeah.
Valorant, which is a shame because she is really, really talented.
Yeah, that mythic team of her and Flom and Adrent, like they were never a good team. Like let's be real here,
No, but she hard
they're a
carried.
meme team, but she was a very good player on that team, and in reality should have been picked up by somebody at one point if
Yeah,
NA didn't disintegrate in like a Thanos snap.
100%.
Um, yeah. Speaking of complexity, who just 2-0'd Vitality, we attribute all of this to Poison this back, even if Poison didn't do anything in that game.
I mean, it is a huge factor. We talked about Yugi last pod and how we weren't really impressed with him and how he hadn't done much on complexity. Bring back Poison. JKS is now like with the team as well. All of a sudden, happy smiles, happy kills, go and smash Vitality. It's easy. How else are you going to fight? You're not going to fight Zaiwu with Yugi, are you? You can do it with Poison though, because he's a monster.
And finally, Team Liquid and Naruto have combined forces to release a new line of what looks like denim jackets, hoodies, and t-shirts in what I would say is so far the weirdest crossover event of the year.
Of the year, yes, not the weirdest esports one
Not
ever,
of all
which
time.
remains Fnatic and Hello Kitty. I can't see it getting weirder than that, except maybe League of Legends and Louis Vuitton. That was a weird one.
That
But
was a weird one. I mean, I'm looking at my keyword right now and I have a Team Liquid Tokidoki keycap on it, so
I
that
don't
might
know
be there
what that
too.
means because I'm not a weeb.
Uh I don't know, man. It's a small cartoon horse. That's all you need to know about it.
All right, man.
All right, that's it for this week. Make sure to follow us on Twitter at ReadTLDR, at Logan Ramhap, and at Aizyesque. We will see you next week.
Peace.
Hey, it's Logan. Thanks for listening to Overtime on Inferno. If you could follow and review us on your favorite podcast player, we're going to choose a lucky reviewer to shout out on the next episode. Last week's lucky reviewer is JWB_ from Apple Podcasts. And if you have any feedback at all, please email me at logan@readtldr.gg. We love hearing feedback from our listeners.